In a week started by Alex Marquez winning his first ever MotoGP Grand Prix in Jerez and a return to Europe for this year's season, MotoGP 25 is now available, and look, it's not got the most interesting list of new content that I've ever seen out of a racing game, but what it does do, I was honestly really impressed by. So let's have a look at the new game, compare it to the previous one, and see if it's worth playing. I've been playing MotoGP 25 for the last week or so, and I think for starters I should probably say that I played a lot of MotoGP 24 and 23 and the previous games and so on. This was a pretty crazy week for game releases. We had like RPG games like Clair Obscur and like Oblivion Remastered being released, but the main one is of course the bike PG, the bike playing game, MotoGP 25. So one of the main features in this year's game is a few new disciplines for your rider to get stuck into in between their Grand Prix rounds. So of these, there are mini bikes, motard, and flat track. You get to race these in 2 different locations, and these disciplines are honestly not as groundbreaking as you might think, but they don't feel terrible to play. It's definitely a way to mix up your driving experience in the game and kind of improve your skills playing MotoGP as well. The easiest of these is mini bikes. Honestly, mini bikes just handle like a tiny MotoGP bike with like a lot of understeer. They're kind of fun, but not too exciting. Motard is the intermediate option that I found. These are sort of motocross style bikes on an asphalt track, and I found these fun, like sliding, but with not a huge amount of slip angle on asphalt. It is not easy, and I don't know, I found it tricky, but you're not super sideways, so I found this the most fun of the new disciplines for me. And the flat track bikes I honestly found really difficult. The flat track bikes are dirt bikes on a flat dirt racetrack, and they get really, really sideways. It actually reminds me of like sprint car racing, where you get the bike into a slide into the corner, and it's all about throttle control once you're into a slide. You use the throttle to control the angle of the slide and the kind of how the bike goes around the corner, not the actual steering itself. It's very Lightning McQueen, and I did find it rewarding to get it right. It took me many, many laps, and I can see some people zenning out to this and becoming really, really good at it, but it's not easy. These new bike categories weave their way into the main game, into the career mode, a little bit how the old supercar challenges did in the Codemasters F1 games. And talking about the career mode, Milestone tweaked a bunch of it this year. It's not a complete overhaul, it is very similar to the previous games, but they did make some changes that did improve the experience. For starters, the career mode plays out as a series of one-on-one challenges with different riders where you need to finish ahead of them over a series of races to get rewards. These can be like beating your teammate to become the number 1 rider in a team and kind of steering the development, or beating another team's rider so that manufacturer gains respect for you. In 2024, you were told who you were racing, and it just kind of happened in the background. In 2025, you get to choose what challenge you want to take on yourself in a little bit more detail. Do you want to try and get strategic and try to become team leader? Or do you want to just build your rep by taking on other teams? Along with this, Milestone has redone how upgrades work across the manufacturers. Each manufacturer now has a rating from like A to like D, and these indicate how many upgrades each team can receive. MotoGP has a limit in real life to how much testing you can do and changes to the bikes. It's kind of to encourage development from the slower manufacturers and bring the grid a little bit closer together. It's similar to F1, which has like scaling wind tunnel access, for example, and this rating simulates this in-game with the amount of upgrades you get. So in each official test where you'll be getting these upgrades, new in this game, you can actually customize each upgrade itself on each bike that you're testing throughout the test. So for example, in my preseason test at Chang, I knew I wanted the power increase that my team offered me, not the fuel delivery that I didn't really want, but I wasn't sure if I wanted like increased handling or stability. So I was playing around with swapping those out on the 2 bikes. I could leave the engine the same on both bikes, but I could like actually swap out the frame in each. And yeah, the preseason test is now in Chang as well, accurate to real life. Telemetry again exists in this year's game, but as far as I could tell, you cannot get it to move like via lap time. It's always distance, and it doesn't show the difference in lap time between two laps that you're comparing. So you can see that you, for example, maybe you braked later on a certain lap and got a worse exit, but was it faster time-wise or was it slower? The game doesn't show you that, so you can't work it out, which I found kind of negated the whole point of having telemetry. New in this year's game with development though is a debrief with your team and race engineer. They ask you what kind of things that your bike needs work on and will steer development in that direction. This is a good feature, and I really like the conversational kind of way of dealing with the bikes in these games. The previous games had this as well, but making setup changes is way more fun when you come in and you tell your engineer that you're having trouble with oversteer on throttle exiting a corner, and they'll go ahead and suggest a bunch of changes and they'll make them. You can make the changes manually yourself, but I think the guided way is much better. On the topic of driving the bikes though, or riding the bikes, I found this year's game generally similar to MotoGP 24, but a little bit easier in a few ways. The MotoGP bikes I found generally a bit more stable this year. There are two main things that I was struggling with in MotoGP 24. This was the death wobble, is what I'm going to call it. When you're on throttle and you start to turn into a corner and you get off the throttle and the bike just starts wobbling and it can throw you off. And also under heavy braking, lifting the rear wheel off the ground under braking. Both of these things are less of an issue in MotoGP 25. I didn't see the death wobble at all, basically, and I found it a lot easier to smoothly come off the throttle. It's generally more stable into the corners, but I found it did want to brake free on exit a little bit more with wheel spin from what I was remembering from last year's game. There was also less wheelies as well. I wasn't having to battle wheelies as much as in MotoGP 24. This is all talking about the pro mode physics though, because new to this game is arcade mode, and this was honestly really surprising to me, but I found arcade mode really, really good. MotoGP games, let's be honest, have been really, really hard for the last couple of years. Under brakes and on throttle, you're always on the edge of just adding slightly too much right trigger and just launching your rider off the bike, or slightly too much left trigger and then just low siding and crashing. It's really stressful. You're playing through the game and you're just always on the edge of inputs, and if you slightly give too much, the rider will just fall off. It often makes the game not super fun to play. You're stressing about falling off the bike and not thinking about apexes and lines and things like that. You're just focusing on not crashing. And this is where arcade mode kind of kicks in. I was expecting arcade mode to give the bikes an insane level of grip, sort of like the old Namco MotoGP games, if you remember those, but it doesn't. The bikes still take ages to stop and they still understeer like a bus. The bikes don't try to kill you. Basically, this is a mode where you can't fall off the bike. And yeah, arcade mode removed so much stress from playing this game, and I found I started treating the game more like something like Gran Turismo or something, where I was just focusing on braking points, lines, apexes, and exits. I was focusing on going fast and not just falling off at all times. It may be slightly embarrassing for me, but I was almost tempted to keep running with arcade mode on. I had such a good time with it, and you can run with arcade mode throughout the entire game. You can even turn it on and off for each race in career mode if you want. The frustrating thing is it does remove, from what I can see, tire wear and fuel wear and a bunch of other little things, which I do want included. So I would love if Milestone had the option to turn things on and off in the future. Like the previous game, there are a lot of accessibility options and neural riding aids availability. With the accessibility options, there is the ability to turn the game speed down, which is great, and also one-hand controls for the first time. This year's game is the first in Unreal Engine 5, and I think it looks generally pretty good, but I'm going to be honest, it's not a huge difference to last year's game. It does have all the updated MotoGP overlays and sounds as well, and I actually think they look a lot better in the game than what I first thought when I saw them all in real life. The new, more cool or like modern sounding theme song makes an appearance as well. It took me a few weeks to get around it, but I honestly think it slaps. Like, I think it's the most fun theme song out of any racing series at the moment. It's better than the previous MotoGP theme, and it is better than the F1 theme as well. This game will also feature multiplayer racing, including crossplay from day one, including for the first time PC, PlayStation, and Xbox, but not Nintendo Switch. And ranked racing and live GPs will make an appearance as well this year. Of course, all the riders and bikes from the 2025 season will be included in this game. Alongside MotoGP, I found the Moto2 bikes a little bit easier to drive than last year. They still have a lot of grip and they still sound insanely loud. And the Moto3 bikes, I honestly found a little bit more difficult to drive than last year. Personally, felt like I was getting way more wheel spin on throttle, which I wasn't really expecting. But yes, and also new tracks included this year include Balaton Park in Hungary. This track is owned by Chanok Nissany, if anyone remembers that name, and it's an interesting track. It's like lots of chicanes. It's very flat. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but it is fine. Let's see if this track actually gets raced though. I drove the Sokol circuit in Kazakhstan and the Kimi Ring circuit in Finland, which both were never raced in real life. Poor Milestone keep making these tracks for MotoGP games that never get finished in real life. At least the Bud circuit got raced, even though it had like snakes everywhere or something. Also returning to this year's game is Brno. Brno is a classic MotoGP track. It's fun, it's flowy, and it is on the side of a really big hill. It is a good track and you will enjoy driving it in the game. My final point on the tracks is that Phillip Island still has trees on the outside of Siberia blocking the ocean, which is an absolute crime, honestly. But yes, sound-wise this year, Milestone put in a heap of work with Dorna and Audio Technica, completely redoing the sounds of the bikes. And look, it's really hard to describe how things sound, I think, using words, but I think they sound a lot beefier. And they just generally sound better. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more backfiring and a lot of other little things. I've got a comparison of 25 to 24, so you can have a listen and see what you think. I had a good time playing MotoGP 25. If we compare it to the previous game, I think it's fair to say that there's no I don't think there's some brand new huge feature or game mode that really breaks the game open and makes this a must buy. It's definitely more on the iterative side of releases. But what it does iterate on, it does really, really well, I think. I think the changes to career mode, the physics updates, the sound updates, make the game a way better game to play than MotoGP 24. I can't see myself going back to the previous game. This is definitely a much better game than last year. That being said, there's nothing hugely different about this year's game compared to the previous one. There's lots of really little improvements to every single thing in the entire game, and they're all really positive. But if you're trying to save money and you have 24 still sitting around, you're not missing out on too much if you give this one a miss. But I won't be. I'll be playing it for the next couple of weeks. And for that, I'm going to give MotoGP 25 4 out of 5 stars. If you are looking forward to playing MotoGP 25, please let us know in the comments. If you enjoy the review, you can leave a like. Otherwise, you can subscribe to Overtake for more racing game and sim racing videos. I will see you next time. Goodbye.